So Mark, this case study was carried out with 50 golfers and 10 shots they had each. What level were they, and was it men and women, right and left-handed?
That's exactly right. They were classed as Category 1 golfers, which in golf are 5 handicap and below, so the most established and most skillful players. And the reason being, using very established players, there's less chance for variability between shots and people because they're more advanced performers, again they're more established movers in golf. So it just removes an element of, well, possibly the reason there was a change was because there's variability in the way they move and they're less skilled in what they do. So category 1 is very important, again, just to give the study slightly more credibility and a little bit more of a robust approach. And again, we used both male and female players, again, to add that variable across both genders. And also the age groups are very important. What I was very keen to avoid is just looking at a particular type of demographic. So, for example, a female in her 20s or male in her 30s, for example. So having both genders across ages of 18 to 45, but only using category 1 players gave the study the variability of different ages, but also the slightly more rigid, robust approach of if there was a change, it's less likely to be because of just the skill level of the performer of the subject.
Now, we've heard of a single blind, double blind. I hadn't heard of that until today.
Yeah.
Just explain to us the double blind.
So double blind is very important. Essentially, it means me, the researcher, had no idea what was happening during the actual collection of data, and neither did the subject or the participant taking place. So the way in which the band was secured onto the participant was it was placed behind them on their shoulder blade, so on the apex of their spine. That was done by a third party, blind to both myself and the participant. So during the actual data collection and the data analysis, neither I nor the subject knew what was happening. So it just gives, again, a lot more validity to the actual study that was happening. If it's just a blind study, there's always that minor chance that the researcher could, because they knew what was happening, possibly just look at the data slightly differently because they knew what sample was looking at what. Was it using the band, for example? Was that sample looking at no band? So that's very important, again, to give a lot more of a robust, a much more durable approach to the research.
Well, what made it also robust and durable is that there was no sequence. It was different for each player.
Absolutely right. Again, so one question you could rightly ask was, well, if, say, every subject wore the band for the first 5 shots, well, maybe they just fatigued in the last 5. So the subjects hit 10 balls in total, 5 with the band and 5 without the band. And it went very much in sequential order. Subject 1 wore the band for the first 5, no band for the second 5. Subject 2 didn't wear the band for the first 5, wore the band for the second 5. So you kind of look at it both ways. They could go faster just because they fatigued on the last 5 shots, or they could go quicker because they got warm on the last 5 shots. So having that kind of sequential inversion of the approach, again, you look at both possibilities, fatigue, and they're just getting looser because they're just warmer now.
Well, you're looking for some real stability in this test. How long was the band placed on the players before they hit the ball?
So the band was placed immediately, so there was no chance to adapt. We actually started collecting the data once the players said they were ready and warmed up, so that's a very individual thing within golf. So I gave every participant the chance to be fully warmed up, and they decided when they said they're now good to start the study. So the band was actually placed on for the entire duration, maximum 3 minutes, which is typically what it would take in the testing environment we had, which was a studio on an open air driving range. The time it takes to hit 5 shots would normally be around 3 minutes in golf. So that was the time duration they wore the band for.
And moving forward, I mean, this is a great case study and one that I'm sure could be used in other sports. But moving forward, how can we look and see where this is going?
I think what's great about most research projects, or certainly hopeful, is that the questions will always arise which are way beyond the scope of the actual research project we had. So during the study, what we saw statistically was there was a difference in the acceleration of the segments that we looked at.
And there were 6 of those, correct?
That's right, 5 human segments and the club speed. So essentially the acceleration of the pelvis, the acceleration of the thorax, the acceleration of the lead arm for a right-handed golfer is the left arm, and then for left-handed golfer, it's the right arm, the lead hand and the club. So in the downswing phase in golf, which for those that don't know golf is essentially the part of the swing that actually hits the ball, so from the top of backswing to impact, we looked at the peak acceleration of the 5 human segments and the club head speed at impact. Really what came from that was the pelvis, the thorax both showed statistically significant differences in wearing the band to no band. Now, although the differences were small, they were still classified as being of significant value. When looking at certainly high-level sport, a very, very minor gain can actually have, for some, an actual, a very notable improvement in the way they perform.
And any gain has got to be
always
brilliant.
I think regardless of whether you're a recreational performer or a very established athlete, I think an improvement in any area, I think for most would be, hugely desirable. And then I think certainly what came from the research was, and again, this is the questions which were way beyond the nature of the question that we looked to explore, was really why those gains happened, which is what we yet don't know. So certainly what future research can really explore and investigate is what actually was happening that actually provided and produced the gains in those areas, or the differences in those areas that the Mojo band provided.
Well, fascinating insight into the case study. We could see this going into many different sports though. If we're thinking about acceleration and the way that the body reacts with the band and without the band, there could be a lot of case studies going on within tennis and within any sport really. And could we see it going down the equine line?
Absolutely. I mean, this was obviously looked at golf, so yes, when you go to different sports, essentially it's human movement. It's kind of how humans moved. So certainly within the study we used, I mean, again, we looked at how the segments behaved. There was a notable difference statistically in the areas that we mentioned. So for sure, this can now really be taken to different sports, and as you say, even into the horse riding world with yourself, with how the animals even behave, which we simply don't know yet. We simply don't know that.
Well, Mojo's out there, Mojo's testing, and we're really excited to see what happens in the future. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you.